What's up, everyone? I'm going to continue to talk about some more mobility cues and kind of the things that I've been seeing lately. And one of the biggest things are these misconceptions or beliefs that people start to acquire when their body starts to become more sedentary. And it can just seem like it's age because typically, after you spend a lot more time in that position, it becomes hard to get out of it. So, if you've been working in corporate for 20 years, or you are what I call a desk jockey. So either on your lunch, morning, or after, you're able to get your movement in, but in 2 4 hour spurts, or maybe even longer, you're sitting all day. So it doesn't matter who you are. If you are just someone that is in this position all day and then you go to the gym and do your bodybuilding, powerlifting style workouts, this is not going to help you move better long term. All you're doing is consistently overlaying on a weak foundation. So as you start to sit, the hip flexors tighten, the pelvis rolls forward, the upper back thoracic area gets very tight, the traps come up as well. So you start to end up in this position that really isn't congruent to moving without pain whatsoever. So this is the biggest kind of switch up that I start to get with my clients. You're basically as old as your body is able to move. So for example, when I was around 15 to 18, I had a pitching injury in my rotator cuff. I had a hip flexor injury coming out of the blocks in a 200 in track. I had broken my ankle in basketball, broken my wrist in football. So, over time, I started to acquire all of these injuries. And, in addition to that, you start to compensate to kind of get back to equilibrium. The body is constantly trying to find balance. It's very smart. However, the way that your body goes about doing that isn't always congruent or helpful for you feeling better. So for example, if you're someone that deals with a lot of low back tightness, the reason your low back is tight is because it's always kind of in a braced position. You're not strong enough to have your core braced properly, so that lower back actually has to kick in double time and starts to, it doesn't trust your strength ability. So it has to grip a little tighter to make sure that if you twist or bend over awkwardly, your back's not gonna blow out. So that is actually your body trying to protect you. So over time, when you only work your back by trying to do heavy deadlifts off of the floor or stick yourself in a barbell back squat when you're not ready for it, or stick your shoulders in a barbell bench press when you can't even activate your scapula. So people try to do this for as long as they can take it without getting injured. Then they end up in PT and they end up doing these banded exercises, and that might make it, that might get you from week 1 to week 6, but you're never really progressing out of that. So you're kind of in this cycle of trying to return to what you want to do, and then you get hurt, and then you go back to PT. So this is the cycle that I was in for a very long time. And PT gets expensive, and you kind of get sick of the rigmarole of just going back to PT, back to the gym, getting hurt, getting back, etc. So what I like to do with my clients is actually teach them to move better. So all we do is attack the weaknesses. I'm not gonna overload you on a bench press when your shoulders look like this. There's zero benefit to that. There's zero benefit to that. We need to get you opening more. So if this is the main position that we spend the most time in, we need to start doing the opposite. So this is called the bow position, and it's basically just the opposite. A preliminary stretch for the handstand or a back bend. So all of these things go hand in hand. So a lot of people, when I start training them, they're kind of, they're so used to just weightlifting. They're so used to bodybuilding style workouts because that has what's been promoted in the collective for so long, because 90% of people's goals when they get started are cosmetics based. And 90% of the people in the health space on either X, YouTube, whatever, most of them are only worried about how they look. It's not about how well they move, what they're able to do with that body, right? They just want to look good. But I'm like, what's the point of putting in all that work to feel like crap? Maybe you look good, But if you feel like crap, it's only a matter of time until you stop moving and revert to back where you are. So that's what they don't tell you about most people on their weight loss journey. And I've been a trainer for over a decade at this point. And people that create a lifestyle that they ultimately want to take a break from or stop, they're doing training that they hate. Guess what's going to happen? You're going to stop doing it. It's simple as that. Obviously, people need discipline and, all of that being said. However, you have to have or derive some joy from what you are doing. That is why I like to get outside and use the gymnastics rings or go for a run at the park or a hill or whatever the deal is. If I'm going to do a boxing workout, maybe I'll do some of that outside. But the gym is not a bad thing, but if you're only limited to the gym, that's going to be an issue, because a lot of the things that you need to be working on don't even require equipment. It just requires supporting your own body. There are some small things as far as like body weight supports, TRX straps and rings are great as well. But, it's really baffling to me, the things that people spend all this money on, and people are just constantly stuck in a cycle of consumerism. And, my mom was this way. She was constantly looking for the next workout machine or this and that and the other thing. Basically doing everything. It's like shiny object syndrome. Doing everything you can to not focus on what you need to actually be doing. So I deal with this a lot with my current clients. They're like, oh, I need to stay away from that because I'm old. And it's like, well, if you refuse to work your hips, all that's going to happen is you're going to end up with a hip surgery someday. And you're going to end up in way more pain and probably a medical debt. So it's like, or you could just work your hips and get mobile instead of trying to squat 300 pounds when you can barely lift your knee above your hip. Like, there's just no point in that. So people are constantly trying to go further than where they are currently. I was like this after I had been lifting for probably 7 years. I was very strong in all my lifts. My physique looked good. However, if I were to take that body and go try to be active, whether it's in a basketball game, pickup, or I wanted to go run 4 miles, or maybe I want to do a race, or it doesn't really matter. But every single time I would go try to be athletic again, I would get met with the harsh reality that I was not ready for it, which was very bizarre because I had previously been an athlete. I still look good. I'm lean. What's the problem, right? It's because I was only focusing on cosmetics. I was only focusing on looking good. And when you stick a body that can move in a circular fashion, for example, what are the traditional ways that people work the shoulders? Side lateral, dip, dip, shoulder press. All of these in a linear fashion. Just A, B, A, B, A, B. And the shoulder moves in all which ways. So if you're not training that, if you're not supporting yourself in certain postures, you're never going to get the full range. And then people wonder why, when they're stuck in a linear plane the entire time, when they go to do other things, they get hurt. So when I played outfield for a while, my overhead mobility really struggled because I was so tight in this area. And I remember one time there was kind of like a line drive hit to me, and I really had to reach back to grab it, right? And the force of the ball, when it hit my glove, it kind of took my arm back, right? Because it was kind of a rocket. And my shoulder felt like it dislocated, and it just felt terrible, like really awkward, kind of a weird noise as well. And, I was like, gosh dang it, how come every single time I have to do something like unorthodox, I get hurt? And it's because you aren't training for any of that. You are only training in the linear plane, and your shoulders, your hips, everything works way differently. Imagine if you've only squatted before, and then you are in a martial arts class and they ask you to throw a kick. Like, you are just totally not going to be ready for that. Your hip flexors are going to be super underdeveloped. And that is ultimately how people tear things. When bodybuilders are once again stuck in the linear plane, and then they go and deal with something that has to do with a twist that incorporates their full body from their feet to their hands, there's going to be a disconnect there, either in the shoulder, the core, or the hip. And a lot of times on impact, they are going to tear something. I've seen it happen at least 4 times in my real life to other people that were kind of bodybuilder types, wanted to start, doing more active things, and bam, they get hurt, they tear a bicep. Now they're stuck in that bulky sling for like 5 months. So don't do that. You got to really stair step your way up. And as far as getting back to running, which running is kind of the foundational movement where you judge everything off of. If you can't run, if you can't even get into proper running posture, you're clearly going to have issues while you run. If you are unable to twist and have good overhead mobility and really free up this area in the middle, yeah, when you're going to go try to do boxing or something athletic, you're going to get hurt. And the older you get, the weaker you get. The longer it goes unkept or untrained, the weaker it is. It's not an age problem, it's a lack of training problem. The 50-year-old that is flexible and mobile and strong is way better than the 28-year-old that just looks good, or he's just jacked. And to be honest, being jacked is not hard. You would think it was if you got on X, but all that is results of your work. And they call them meatheads for a reason. It doesn't take a lot of thinking. Just high intensity and high output. That's really all there is to it. And most people that promote themselves on social media are on roids anyway. So it's like, for natural lifters, as far as people telling you the truth and how to, age gracefully and also be strong, there's not much of that. So that's what I'm hoping to accomplish with this channel. It's like, I'm not going to be talking about looking good, because that is just going to be a byproduct of everything that we do. We don't need to focus on it, right? Should I be focusing on how my abs look in the mirror, or should I actually just focus on doing all the work that I need to do to have my abs work properly, and then them looking good is just going to be a byproduct? It's like in a business, if you're only focusing on the revenue coming in and you're not focusing at all on your output that is getting that revenue to come in, you got it ass backwards. So we're switching it around, and this is where your time needs to be spent. And in my programming, the first section is all to do is like the reclaim, rebuild section of the face, because most people come in with 90% of the same problems: rolled forward, tight bicep, tight hip flexors, tight hamstrings, weak ankles, pointed out. Everything is an issue. So our whole first part of the program is all dealing with getting you back to your baseline, getting you back to the point where you can be active again, start reintroducing active movements. And of course, we're still going to focus on looking good as a product of that. However, you need to put more focus into the area that I am currently talking about. So this within itself will start to get you back to that baseline. And then in sections 2 and 3, it's kind of like the amateur advanced, then you got beginner at the very bottom, where you're just trying to get back into the movement and not feel like crap. So then we slowly stair step you up through progressions, and within a year or so, the next thing you know, you're back to doing the things that you like to do. And guess what? You look good, and you don't even have to really focus on it that much. So over time, these mental shifts will help a lot. People get stuck because they're like, oh, I'm old, I can't do that. Oh, I don't feel good, I can't do that. They don't know how to train. They don't know what to do on their off days. And they don't know how to make it work for them, so they don't end up being one of the 90% of people that end up losing weight and just gaining it back, right? You don't really change that much if you always end up back where you started. So that is always what we're trying to help people get through. So hopefully that helped. If you want to work with me, shoot me a message, leave a comment. Have a good one.